Thank you. So yes, it's very exciting to be able to talk about the Repair Cafe data on restarters that Brigitte has done so much work to build this partnership with an international organisation that is bringing together data from repair cafes all over the world. And now we've been adding the data from Aotearoa to it. And it's been quite a bit of work. Started before I got involved, but this year we've seen so many cafes join, and we're really starting to get a very interesting picture of all the things that are coming to repair cafes and what we can fix, what we can't. So yes, I'll explain what is on the restarters database. Next slide. Okay. So there's, I think, over 50 repair cafes around the country at the moment, and we've got 32 repair cafes on restarters. It's sort of, I said that at the start of the week, we're still working with people to get onto restarters, so I think it's more now. And we've been really focused on trying to get data for May to October to try and get a picture of what's going on. And gradually building up as cafes join restarters and start putting data onto restarters. So we have 110 events listed for that period, and 3/4 of them now have repair data. So it is building quite a picture. September was our busiest month. We had 28 repair cafes recorded in September. We know there were probably more, but that's 28 on restarters. And we also know how many visitors, so over 2,400 visitors. If you visit repeatedly, it would count. It's sort of visits rather than visitors. And we also know that we've repaired, we've seen over 3,000 items. So there's quite a lot of information that we've been entering into restarters. So when a cafe joins, you create a group page, you create your events, and you start putting up the data on the things that you've seen. So that's a bit about the background of getting some information on restarters. The next is about what we've actually got on it. So I know that's small. Hopefully it's sort of readable. You can see a big line at the top. That's clothing and textiles. So we see a lot of clothing and textiles at repair cafes. The way that it works with restarters is they started off by doing a focus on electronic items. So they've got a lot of detail for the categories for electronic items. For the non-electronic items like clothing, they've just got one big category. There's more detail within the system, but for their reporting, this is what we focus on. Anyway, so we see a lot of clothing. We see a lot of hand tools is the next big category, third category there. Miscellaneous is the other one above it. Kitchen items, and then we've got kettles and toasters listed separately, lamps, furniture, jewellery, bicycles, sewing machines, a really wide variety of things that we see at repair cafes. So the numbers there are the numbers of how many items have been recorded on restarters. So that is over 800 items that are clothing and textiles that we've seen. So that's part of us understanding what are the things that need repairing. The next slide shows you the brands. Now, people don't always record brands on restarters, but we have been really encouraging people to include that information where we have it. So the brand that we've seen most at the repair cafes that have recorded data is Breville, then Sunbeam, then Russell Hobbs, then Panasonic. So the electrical items. So we're getting the information on the brands for the electrical items. So that kind of helps you understand too what it is, the types of things that we're seeing. So there's a very rich data set under all that, of course, exactly what we see for each of those items. And then the next slide shows how successful we were, because this is what we really want to understand. What is coming to repair cafes and needing repairing, and can we actually repair them or not? So of the information that we have on restarters, clothing and textiles, over 90% of what we see can be repaired. So, you know, that's great. If somebody brings in clothing, we usually, it's a really high success rate. But on the small kitchen items, it's less than 50%. Those electronic items are really, really difficult. And I think you get a similar thing for We've got the toasters and the kettles, it's less than 50%, and a lot of the electronic items are very low. Whereas the hand tools, so the non-powered tools that might come in, that is again over 90% that we can repair. So it shows you a bit of the challenges that we have, but it does show you that we do still repair an awful lot of the small electrical items that come in, because I know sometimes people think, oh, there's no point with toasters, but there is, because, you know, a lot of the time we can repair things. It's just more challenging. So that's really useful to know. Part of the value of putting the data on restarters is it then they ask you to put in the weight of each item. And so from the weight, they say how much of all those items that we fixed, how much did they weigh, and that's how much we saved from landfill. And then in the background, they use that information to also convert that into how much we've saved of carbon emissions. Because when you have all these things that have been made, they use resources, they get transported, if we just throw them out, then that has a huge impact on carbon emissions, because then you need more stuff and you're throwing out things, which has a direct impact too as it goes into landfill. So in the background, restarters have worked out ways of going from the weight of the repaired items, of what's saved directly from landfill, and the CO2 that's indirectly saved by repairing things. They have really cute graphics that they produce for each cafe. So I showed you that one there for the Nelson Whakatū Repair Cafe, of how many kilograms of waste that we have prevented, how many kilograms we've prevented of CO2. And then they convert that into, this is the same amount of emissions as driving many, or tens of thousands of kilometres. So it's a way of showing the value of repair and the value of what we do has a real direct impact on the climate and the world in ways that people don't really think about sometimes. And it's really useful for the next slide, which is the right to repair advocacy. So there's all sorts of reasons people think something to a repair cafe. It's great to have things repaired, that immediate sort of thing. But this is also part of a bigger network, an international network, because this is celebrating International Repair Day. People are doing this all over the world. And having that data, bringing that together, is so valuable in so many ways, because it shows the support for repair in the community. It shows the success of repairs, that we can do this. It can add up to make a huge difference of what is saved from landfill and reducing carbon emissions. And it also helps us know when we can't repair things, where we really need to focus our advocacy efforts. So we've seen what people have been doing overseas around right to repair advocacy. That there's been particular areas that people have focused on of trying to improve legislation, because there's a lot of barriers in place for repairs. So there's a lot of barriers about intellectual property, or about requirements for what can and can't be repaired, licensing and things like that. And sometimes a little change can actually really support repair. One of the really interesting things that we're looking at, or France is doing, is talking about introducing repairability scores for products. So every product would have to have on it a little label that shows how durable that product is and how repairable it is. So if a product is glued together and made never to be got apart, which is something we see at repair cafes, like, you know, something is broken, if only you could take it apart, then you might be able to repair it, but you can't, then that would get a low repairability score. Whereas if a product is made and it is made in such a way that you could take it apart and you can get replacement parts if you need it, then that would get a really high repairability score. So the fact of the data we collect in repair cafes and we put on restarters showing what we can and can't repair and what the barriers are, can help in the advocacy of something like that. So, you know, for the work that they're doing in France on repairability scores, which will hopefully benefit more broadly once it's introduced, this data is so valuable. And so here in Aotearoa, we get presented to the Parliamentary Environment Select Committee in August, calling for legislation to help make sure that products meet those basic standards of durability and repairability, and that that people can access repair services. So we talked about a range of legislation and ways that they could support that. And we used the data from eStarters to help paint part of that picture too. So yes, I just wanted to leave that with encouraging you all. Data is so valuable. And it's been really great to see as we start to build this picture of what we're seeing. And I know we can do a whole lot more. I'm very interested to see, in particular, any questions that people are interested in trying to answer from the data that we're collecting.